police car picked up my tail as I crossed over the roundabout by the hotel and headed home along the seafront. I took the wide bend ahead around the castle and, coasting on the brake, turned out of character left onto Marine Drive. Seeing them still in pursuit, I pulled up in a space big enough for us both and turned the ignition off. It was over. The strap of my seatbelt dangled loosely like a neglected novelty tie in a closet, and if that didn't hang me, the right side brake light had blown too. A pedestrian on the high street had warned me about it at the weekend, but it was now Thursday, and my excuses other than ignorance and stupidity were just about dry. Out of a sense of preservation, I scoured the dashboard for a loose mint. Alcohol clung to my breath like an unwanted admirer. It was the day after Valentine's, barely noon. In my rear view, I watched the two officers run my details through a computer. Perhaps it was that, or they were wagering on whether or not I'd make a dash for it, and how far to the sea I'd get. Maybe they were betting if I was drunk or sober, and how much over I was. They drove an incongruous white Range Rover with a mud-spattered grille that looked like it belonged off-road as much as I did. Attached to the roof's canopy, two blue sirens sat between a large placard that read "Police," like a reserve sign in a restaurant, reserved for a cell for one. Watching them climb out of their patrol car, I wondered in that absurd half-glass way what might have happened if I'd stayed for another, or left when I'd had the chance to. Was I careless or just unlucky? Perhaps I was both. My associates were still in the rows, I imagined, sharing toast to someone they'd never met or knew. I'd drunk for less, we all have, but I was the fool who'd got caught. I wound the window down with a handle and tried to compose a story that might help me get off the hook. Good morning, officers. Or should that be afternoon? We were just passing through when we saw you without your seatbelt, sir. I understood, I told them. I was foolish. It wouldn't happen again. It didn't happen. It was just the one time. The pair looked me over with a mixture of pity, disdain, and amusement before inviting me to step out of the car. They allowed me to smoke, which was kind, as one officer inspected my vehicle while his colleague went back to fetch a breathalyzer from the front of the Rover. He told me they were with the river police. What river was that, I wondered, as I gazed blankly at a couple of fishing boats beached up on the shingle beyond the memorial benches. Ahead I could see the cliffs of Kingsdown, so near, but so far away. What do you do down here? He asked me in a slow, measured tone. I'm an antiquarian, I told him after a thought. I deal in old books. Kinda like a modern-day Lovejoy, he teased. I smiled faintly at his remark. Kind of, though we can't all be lovable rogues. Like all businesses, it had an unsavoury side. But like police work, it wasn't all pulling bodies from a river. The River Patrol. I couldn't place one, or remember crossing one round here. He told me they were taking a pair of young otters upstream, somewhere beyond the Alcombe Valley. The animals had been flown down in a special plane from Scotland, in the hope they would breed in the wild, where a mixture of modern farming methods, motorways, and a Channel Tunnel had made them almost extinct. Didn't otters hibernate? I thought of asking him, but my mind was preoccupied with fears of my own survival. The device ready, I stamped my cigarette out and blew into it under the instruction of both policemen. Handing it back, I felt a load loosen from me, as if I'd been freed from dragging round a large rock. Waiting, I cast a glance over my shoulder at my old VW, a gold Mark II Golf that I would never drive again. A rich client once told me it was the car he'd bought his first wife when they lived together on the Fulham Road. In truth, I was probably too tall for it, but it gave me a character I'd been missing from other cars. And I often imagined I was some existential private eye for an obscure series of crime novels set in and around Deal. On first acquiring it, I was persuaded to enter a couple of classic car shows, but I was useless in the company of petrol heads and felt a bit of a phony amongst the weekend enthusiasts in their Morris Minors and Hillman Imps. I should have looked after it more, at least found a garage to rent for the winter, but cars were like cats to me. They came and went too soon. I think the battery's dead, Steve, Have we got a spare? As Steve returned to the truck again, I looked at his partner for some direction. He was about my age, perhaps slightly older. A family man, I imagined, someone you could count on, a bloke you could trust. Look, officer, I offered, why don't I just leave my car parked here and walk home? He ignored me. Perhaps he didn't hear. I could come back in the morning and replace the bulb on the brake light, I ventured, like a rat trying to save his own skin. We can't let you do that, sir. He watched me as he spoke into the radio attached to his vest. We need to be somewhere else. He's calling to see if there's a passing police car that will take you to Ashford. Ashford? It was 40 miles away. A new town with new houses and a new breed of young professionals who'd moved out of London to be closer to it by rail. Ashford? How could they take me there? Nothing? Steve asked his partner in a resigned way. The pair convened with one another for a time that seemed an eternity. I was chain-smoking now, making a mess of the curb. Right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to drive you back, and Steve will follow in the Range Rover. Okay with you? I buckled my seatbelt on the passenger side and sat in silence as we turned out of Marine Drive and along the Strand. I've never driven one of these, he said in a matter-of-fact way. Listen to that engine purr. He pulled off onto Beach Road and let it rip a little. Where do you live in Kingstown? On the parade. You probably don't want your neighbours seeing you coming back with the police. Can I drop you somewhere near? Perhaps the Zetland, I offered, barely believing my luck. I wanted to ask his name, or at least shake his hand, but he left me as a stranger might. Watching him walk round the waiting truck and climb back into it, I thought about the otters and where they'd end up, and if one day I'd become what they were, extinct.